So first things first, James, how was your Anime North?
I don't know. How was it? I heard there was a convention for Japanimation a couple of weeks ago for adults.
For, for adults.
And I don't know where I am. I think I'm in some void, aren't I? I had a bag over my head and somehow I'm now in a room with you. I don't know why.
Oh, that. Well, we usually save that whenever Mohammed Abdel Hadi does the show, but this time around, he actually managed to evade our capture, so we had to kidnap you instead. Okay, so here's the story. This is, well, as you've probably now figured out, James is actually now here in person, and he's out of quarantine. He's out of his self-imposed quarantine, which we mentioned during the Anime North episodes. But actually, James is also here to test something else. So we're going to, just to backtrack a little bit from the Anime North episodes, we found out the hard way, and you probably noticed it in the night number 2 recording, the official episode 68 recording, that one of our microphones actually died. And it is one of the 2006 microphones that we originally used. So over the 2 weeks since then, I went on a microphone spree because I found out that Shure had some of their mid-end microphones, the MV7s, or more specifically the MV7Xs, on sale. No, well, I think their entire microphone line, their podcast-related microphone lines, were on sale from their high-end SM4, I think it is, right down to the MV, to their midline MV7s, and then one step down to their X line, which is just phantom power specific, where their regular MV7s are USB plugins as well. So I bought a bunch of them.
Well, I'd say 15 years and a bit on our old microphones is probably a lot more than probably what the manufacturer thought we were probably going to use those for. So
minus the hiatus years, right? Minus the purgatory years. So James is here actually testing out the new microphones with me, and so far so good.
First lesson was make sure everything's plugged in, right, Mike?
Yeah, that's an old lesson, isn't it? I mean, I did it again. I mean, back in the version 1 era episodes, I always had a habit of forgetting to plug the board into the computer. And during the initial test, I found out that the board wasn't going into the computer. But how could it go into the computer when the two aren't plugged into each other?
Very astute as
we just keep in mind we did half an episode like that, and my old laptop, my old iBook microphone, that was the only thing recording it, and ultimately the thing ran so hot that the fan on the old iBook started going, and I think throughout much of that episode, you heard the fan. Mm-hmm. I thought it was hilarious when I re-listened to it all those years ago.
Hey man, if you're coming to listen to us, right, you're getting a full professional experience, unlike other podcasts that are on YouTube and other parts of the web now, right?
Yeah, well, this is still very much a cobbled together show, and it shows after all these years. Okay, where do you want to start today? Do you want to start back at Anime North since you didn't go to what was like from afar? What were your impressions of the convention? Just from what you heard from us, from like the various Discords and chats you were privy to.
I talked to some people that were in the vendors room too, so I can say that very busy and stuff like that, packed is what I heard. So it sounds like everyone was abiding by the rules that Anime North had set down, and
although people tried to have some gotcha moments. There are videos and photos of people who, like staff members who briefly did not have their masks on. I guess briefly. I don't know the whole context. Mm-hmm. But somebody tried to play some gotcha moments. And
that's kind of silly because, as you know, sometimes it's like, I think it sounds like everyone tried to do it within the realms, and there was distancing, as you said. And the one thing though was the dealer's room. Obviously, it's busy and all that other stuff, but the one dealer that was dealing in video games and stuff like that, one of the guys that was helping him out, they were telling me because the Congress Center and stuff like that, that part of it is like an older part of it and is more like, I guess, the factory part or whatever. So there's not really any air conditioning or anything in it. So they said it got hot. They said it got hot because we had another hot weekend that weekend.
Yeah. And then on top of that, it sounds like it'll be a record for Anime North.
Yeah.
Although people like to...
I think it was around 35,000. That was with attendees and staff and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But they definitely hit the 2019 mark or more for attendees. They definitely hit it. And
you're very sure of that.
As you said, it seems like, interesting enough, more people, I guess, didn't want to do the rollover. They decide, okay, I'll just have my money back and then we'll see what happens when we get closer. And you know how usually people do it earlier, they get the discount. A lot of people, they probably didn't get the discount because it sounds like 2 weeks before it just went poof.
Well, you did pay attention to what Chris said.
Yeah, no.
So you did listen to the episodes.
And Norm as well and stuff.
Yeah, and when both of them did the show, admittedly they sounded a little worn out.
No, I figured it was going to, because you probably had other people like myself where it's just bad luck and you have someone either got COVID or someone that was like had a close contact. I never actually got anything or whatever. I just had a close contact, but they said we would rather you not join us if you had a close contact. And I wonder how many people abided by that. Hopefully most people did, but we'll see what happens and stuff like that after the fact. I haven't heard because they had an email address where they said, do email us if you did contact COVID or anything like that. So I guess they could do tracing and stuff like that if there was any worries.
Okay. You feeling okay?
Yeah, no, I was
well, you're
fine.
well enough to be here.
I never got any symptoms. I tested negative the whole entire time. So as they say, much ado about nothing, but unfortunately, as they say, you just don't know and stuff like that. And I don't want to tempt fate, especially given how many people were there and stuff like that. So,
well,
and they were probably more regimented. Like they were more, well, AX backtracked and went to the more regimented mall. But I think when it's that large, you have to kind of go that mode. And I think there's another convention this weekend over in Vancouver, Anime Revo. They're doing similar thing to Anime North with making sure about the masks and things like that. And I'm not going to say they're the same range, but they're still a very big convention, metropolitan area and stuff like that. And it's funny how we found out about that because I think they mass email not just the people in Vancouver, but also the people that went to the Toronto convention before.
IFF here, yes. This is actually a very strange weekend because as far as I can tell, 3 noteworthy anime conventions are going on this weekend. So Anime Revolution in Vancouver.
Otakon, which we might talk a bit about. And then that other convention that I guess everyone loves to talk about in Houston, which supposedly High Dive and Sentai, they had a choice of conventions. They decided, no, we're not going to go to the convention. And we're going to go to Otakon.
I'd choose Anime Revolution myself.
They went just to Otakon. But
no, yeah, obviously you're going against arguably the second biggest one in the U.S., right?
Yep.
I mean,
biggest on the East Coast, of course.
Yeah, easily the biggest on the East Coast.
Because they moved from Baltimore and now they're in Washington.
Well, Washington proper, but it's that area and everybody's there. I mean, Michi Lee, who did the Donwa panel at Anime North, and who we've talked with on and on. We've talked with privately, and she's there. I know that, and she's a Vancouverite. Mm-hmm. She made the choice to go there, and she was brought on as a panelist. But it's just a weird one of those weekends, right? Like I'd probably choose to do Otakon if, like as I said, it's arguably the second biggest.
The question is, do you want to go to Otakon and lose all your luggage if you have to go through Pearson Airport and go through the gauntlet?
I'm sure the Trash Taste Boys will have that story at some point.
Yeah, no,
right?
it was kind of funny when I was looking at that and they talk about first US tour and their promoters and stuff. And so they kind of were using that. And I said, well, there's one city on here that just doesn't feel right. And I said, I'm not sure. Do you have a US passport, Mike? I know I don't. And supposedly Toronto's on there for October 2nd.
Yeah.
So unless we became American citizens, I don't know.
Well, remember there's that discussion, what's the best passport to have? I think a Japanese passport is up there.
Yeah, I'm sure that they're gonna like have everything protected if they're coming across our border to go through Pearson. That's for sure. But it's funny we talk about those little things and stuff like that. And we had another one a few weeks ago. Sega's doing the Sega Mini 2, and it's going to have like Sega CD games, all this other stuff. Oh yeah,
more video games.
They had it's going to come out end of October. They have the Japanese model and stuff like that. And then I guess a month ago, they announced, oh, we're going to do a US model and stuff like that, but only through Amazon.com. But it's shipping from Amazon Japan, which is making it even more like hard to get and stuff like that. Supposedly they said, I guess with the shortage of parts and things like that, it's going to be limited. But the hilarious part on the US model that's coming from Amazon.com, from Japan, Amazon, Japan, Sega, and Sega is selling it through there, is that it says North America. So it should be able to be sold in North America. And as we know, North America encompasses Canada, US, Japan. Sorry, Canada, US, Mexico. Sorry for the last one. It's like if Japan became a part of North America, then hey, you never know. That'd be a weird world.
Well, I mean, it's a bunch of islands that could be floating. Well, it'll probably happen a couple million years from now, sure.
So Mexico, Canada, US. But when you actually go to the .com listing for this US version of the Mega Drive or Genesis Mini 2, yes, it says North America, but when you go from Canada, it says it will not accept your address. And it's like it's only accepting US addresses, supposedly. So I'm like, when did the US become North America?
Well, I'm sure the US thinks of it that way themselves.
But those ones that made me give a good chuckle. Well, when I saw those
it's like Right Stuff in many respects too, and maybe Discotech, how the Canadian market is treated. Like we've had these constant discussions over the years about how Canadian anime fandom is treated in the whole realm,
and some of it
world
is
fandom, North American fandom too.
Yeah, and we talked about with Crunchyroll and that we were the first domino and stuff like that, where they said, you know what, we're not gonna you have to pay to actually get our content. We're not gonna let you watch it for free with ads and stuff because our market is so small, and that factors in too with shipping and all this other stuff. Like I know we had talked earlier in the month about, and it wasn't on the podcast, Right Stuff and Canadian shipping. And they finally had to get rid of the free shipping. No more free shipping at $250 because like the costs and inflation and the surcharges for shipping just became so much. So now we get to see the real cost of shipping and stuff like that. And I think it'll be an eye opener for a lot of people. And it'll be interesting too. Will some people buy less, as in some people may have been getting to that free shipping by adding certain things, or maybe things they may not have wanted to watch, or they got friends to get something that maybe they're not going to watch. Orders, you know what I mean? So it makes me wonder about that too. But the shipping, even though we're paying for it, is still going to be the same as what was before. So it's going to be FedEx. It's going to come to our door. We're still going to pay the taxes, so we don't have to worry about any excess charges and things like that other than the shipping cost. And it comes to our door actually a lot better than what we had before through Canada Post, and it's tracked. And I feel confident that it's going to get there, and if something does happen, I can go through FedEx.
Sometimes it's...
I haven't had any issues.
There are two popular adages. One you've always heard of. It's you get what you pay for, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other is one more recent, and one that I often use these days after watching it watching The Many Faces of Ito, and it's one that I've started to think of a lot myself. There's nothing more scarier than free, or nothing's more expensive than free, something to that effect.
And I'm sure, like, the US and stuff like that, some of them are going to have to start raising prices again for their free shipping and stuff like that. Because some of them I know for Right Stuff and a few of them, they were, I think, at 75, but I wouldn't be surprised if at some point they hit $100 and stuff like that, because they can't keep absorbing. Someone's going to have to pay at the end of the day. And I don't think gas is getting any cheaper, as they said.
Not right now, no. One feels, what goes up must come down at some point, but we just don't know when.
Yeah, it's funny.
Well, a little bit down. Not back to old levels.
Nah, it's coming back up again, but we know that's how life goes. But the funny thing, we talk about free shipping at Right Stuff, just to end it, is that this week was the last week of their birthday sale. And supposedly, I think this week they were allowing free Canadian shipping, but it was at $350. So that was interesting. But
do you think, yes or no, first of all, do you think any form of free shipping will ever return with Right Stuff to Canada?
I think it'll just be like the one we just saw, which will be, maybe they might do one in December. Like, it'll be through promotion, but it'll be a larger amount, like that $350 amount, if they can do it. But it'll only be for a week or a day or something like that. Interesting enough, I was thinking of it just now. Sentai, their Sentai store. So they do US, Canada. Whenever they do their sales and stuff like that, they are doing their summer sale right now. It's $200 free shipping. So they're still kind of doing free shipping whenever they do their sales and stuff like that. And they've been hovering around $200 to get to. And so it'll be interesting to see people like holding back and maybe getting a few things from there, because sometimes people like doing the special editions or some of the other things. It all depends. But the thing is, I have ordered from the Sentai store once. It was the last Christmas sale and stuff like that. It was $200 for free shipping. I'd won a gift card or something like that, so that helped pay for some of that too. But they're not through FedEx. They were through Canada Post, I believe. But interesting enough, so $200, I was right at the mark. But when it came through Canada Post, they just delivered it to me. I didn't get hit for anything, for taxes, for anything, which I was surprised, because usually you would get hit by that from Right Stuff under the old method and stuff like that. So it's kind of like that. You're playing a game of chicken when you're going through Sentai and stuff like that, even though I probably would pay for it, because when they do their sales, they are dropping them down low.
So it's worth it in that sense.
Yeah.
Okay. As I said, I don't buy it as much anymore. So this is not like, well, remember, throughout the 4 years of the return of version 2, like in many respects, I've been very much Rip Van Winkle, very much out of the anime fandom, and just a little deeper than I was throughout most of those purgatory years, but certainly not to the level I was as a fan when we did the podcast originally in version 1. Yeah. So some of this is still eye-opening to me, and in many ways, maybe I'm playing catch-up. And I always said, as throughout the pandemic series, I'll probably never catch up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this podcast will probably never catch up to all the other stuff going on, all the popular anime podcasts. But me as a person, me as a fan, will probably never catch up to the same level as fandom these days, as most of us, a lot of us in our fandom.
As you know, I'm not sure how people do it today anyway, because think of how many series are just coming out, and it's like bing, bang, boom and stuff like that. And they're just throwing out tons of content, whether it's original, whether it's from light novels, whether it's from manga, it's like video games, you name it. Like it would be impossible to keep up. But I know from what we were just talking about is that manga and stuff like that, you can probably hopefully go through Indigo, but the sales are getting few and far between. So even then you have to look at the US. And anime in that you have to look through the US, but it's like you got to pick and choose your battles of what you want to get. But the problem is not everyone, of course, has access to a credit card, and maybe they don't have access to an actual physical location they can deliver to, because some won't even deliver to PO boxes. So there's a lot of things to factor in. The funny thing, though, is we talk about the fact I would now have to pay for shipping and stuff like that. The cost is probably still lower than from when back at the beginning of the millennium when we were collecting singles on DVDs, like 4 or 5 episodes a pop. It feels like it was way higher. That like we're getting discount, even the discotheque stuff. It's incredible to think how much money we're paying, and that's even before they start doing discounts and stuff like that at 40% off on Right Stuff. Like they're giving a lot of content for a really good price and stuff like that. I think we never thought we were going to be here, but I guess there's different market factors, whether it's streamer or whatever, that it comes down to. But it depends on the other thing of some fans may not feel that way, but if you really like it, you want to support, then just put your money where your mouth is, right?
Yeah, well, we've had these discussions
and we
before.
always did that way back when too. Like we picked and choose what we did way back when.
Almost bought everything I liked, almost. I mean, I have to pull back now.
But it's funny too, because way back when it's like we bought what we liked and things like that, but that was still better than VHS. I don't know how those people did it way back then. It's like now probably the people now are looking back at us when we were doing DVDs and wondering what the heck we were doing.
No, they're just seeing deals in the Noma no Ichi, really. I mean, we talked about like a lot of stuff that I would have bought in at the beginning of the millennium. I admit that was on the table during that Friday at Anime North, right? So, and I did say, I think I back then during episode 68, parting with some of it was bittersweet, but it just felt like it had to be done. And I'm confident that most of the stuff that got sold are with people who really want to keep it, and not stuff that I'll probably eventually see on eBay if I do a search right now.
No, that's how I think even me and my brother probably would have looked at it. Because me and Matt, I know if you look between our collections for video games, anime, manga, and what have you, probably the vault, as you'd like to call it, we probably have some stuff that if we find the right people, we could make a decent amount of money on and stuff like that. But some of the stuff we're like, you know what, as long as it goes to a good home or whatever, that's good enough for us. Like, we're not going to make money on our collections. I don't think, even though if we found the right people, maybe we could, or maybe we've devalued certain items because they get re-released and stuff like that. And I don't really look at it that way, because if I've enjoyed it and I still have access to it, then I feel good about it. But if I have nothing left for it, then it's like yourself. It's like maybe go to the Noma no Ichi, go somewhere else just to let it find a new home and stuff like that. And I'm not going to sell it for pennies on the dollar, but I'm not going to go for the highest price and hope someone's going to come around to see it, right? Like, right. I'm willing to make a deal and say, hey, if you want this, just pay a decent price. You know what I mean? And usually it's a lot less than what some others would want.
Well, you want to see, like, you want me to go through the list of the stuff that I remember selling at
Sure. Why not you give us the list?
Okay. And remember, and as I go through some of this, just understand already right off the top, these guys probably got a good deal on them, but I won't tell the price anyway, right? Remember the replicant books from way back? The catalog of models and stuff that just showed pictures. Yeah. And as I said, if you're into models, at least you can see what the history of it was like in the late 90s and early aughts. So I sold my books from there. And the thing was, I tried to sell them, I think it was 5 years ago when I first did the Noma no Ichi. And nobody made an offer for any of those books. But they were the first things to go this time around. Which is cool, and and I doubt the guy who heard this, who bought them, is listening to this. But he looked like a guy who, well, it was a good deal first of all, but he just looked like a guy who would appreciate models, and at least he'd get a sense of, you know, as I said, some of the history that would have been in the 90s, what would have been popular in the 90s, right? So I thought that was pretty cool. Moonface, I sold the DVDs for those. I had my DVD copy. Well, one of my DVD copies of Ayori Oshi, I sold. But the guy who bought it, told me he was actually looking for the manga.
Ah, yes, I've both the manga and the anime and stuff
like
that.
But I know why another copy of the anime too. So
I know why people want the manga though, because it has the real deal, as we said, the full series and stuff like that. And I think I enjoyed the manga a little more than the anime.
Well, most of the time the manga's more, you know, that old phrase, the book is better than the movie, right? Kamichu, which is out of print, I think. That's why that
is out of print. And was it the one with the box and everything? Yeah. Because I got the box and everything. And that one was a fun little series, wasn't
I never got around to watching it. It's just like came to the realization I probably never will.
Okay, because I watched sub and dubbed, and both of them were great
Really
in
well
both
done?
languages. Yeah, New Generation did the dub and stuff like that. It was one of their last ones. It might have been.
Geez, you're making me regret it.
Well, I still have it if you want to borrow it.
Borrow is the word,
it's in
yes.
it's in the vault there somewhere.
Okay, in your vault, in your version of the
Yeah.
vault. Well, I sold the Funimation copies of Kodocha, right?
hmm
So
Are you gonna get the new discotheque, the 2 sets? The first set's already out, so
yeah, I know it's to be determined. To be determined. The manga, the manga I still have, and it is actually a surprisingly decent read.
and that's the Tokyo Pop ones.
Yeah,
I would be surprised if one day someone picks that up again. It's like we've seen a lot come back, which we might talk about later.
Hopefully in a bit. We're already almost halfway. Half an
No,
hour in.
we'll just keep going till I have more time than you think, Mike. I'm
Okay.
watching as well.
The Dead or Alive swimsuit books. Remember?
So that one was for the plot, right? That's why you
Yeah,
bought
it was
it?
for the plot. Yeah.
Did it have some game tips too, maybe?
No, I wouldn't be. Yeah, if you could read Japanese.
I'm just trying to think, was that before they did the extreme volleyball or after or during? You know what I
During,
mean? How they
during.
did
I think it's
the
during.
extreme volleyball for Xbox, wasn't
During,
that after?
yes.
And so I'm
You
wondering
said
if it was
before, during, and after. The word is probably yes. So,
just do all.
if I see you in my dreams, and I think they mentioned, the others mentioned, well, Kevin mentioned more specifically. I think John Cirabella was here.
Yeah, I was going to say that was another surprise of the Anime North is you weren't sure if a lot of the vendors from down south would come because of Pearson and trying to get your stuff basically to the convention across a border. You know what I mean? Like it would be even more of a hassle, I would think. But John Cirabella was there. Supposedly Video Games New York from New York City as well was there. And so supposedly, I guess they must have been doing brisk business, but I guess they felt it was worth it enough to come up and stuff and do that because that still was a chance for them and other vendors down south because you don't know if the crowd is going to be back, but it definitely came back. So they probably, I guess, even with all the hassles, were happy.
Maybe it was worth it to some degree.
And I know John Cirabella, they're still putting out stuff every month on the kiddie line and the regular line of some older titles on Blu-ray. So
Yeah, so if I see you in my dreams, that's the thing. I sold that. And I mentioned, I liked the OAV, the TV series, and High School Girls. This is everything that I remember selling.
and High School Girls just came out on Blu-ray as well. So
Yeah, but I sold both the DVDs and the Blu-rays. So I mean, both the
I can't
DVDs.
remember, did you get
No,
the
I never got the Blu-ray. What I meant to say. Excuse me for a second here. What I meant to say was I sold the manga as well.
That's
but I
what I was
sold them
going to
separately.
say. Did you have the manga, and so you sold the manga and the
But strangely
DVDs
separately.
yeah.
Separately because I
And
tried.
that one was a complete one because I know that was Dr. Master who did the manga.
Mm-hmm. I keep telling you that was a strange story because I tried to sell them to one guy I called it the all media set, right? No, he just wanted the DVDs, and ultimately he was able to haggle me down, and then somebody else just picked up the manga.
Things have a way of working up, right?
Yeah, so it worked out okay. As I said, if any of you are listening who bought stuff from me that day, I hope you're enjoying it, and thank you. Okay, I wish we could go and say, okay, do you have any further impressions of Anime North? But
I was going to say like a few other things because we still got a few more on some of the convention stuff, but Anime North, and then I saw it at other conventions as well. Like, for example, AX, because I saw a few of their panels, is we're seeing a lot more VTubers come onto the scene and stuff like that. And it was very interesting. I know V Shoujo, like you have HoloLive and all that, but definitely V Shoujo had a lot of presence at AX and some other things. And the AX one, what was interesting is it was like a screen, but it's a vertical screen. And that's where they had the VTuber on when they were doing their meet and greets and when they were doing their panels. And it was big enough that I guess they had the actual height correctly propositioned on there and stuff like that. And it was interesting that back and forth that they could still have now for signatures and stuff. I guess they could do digital signatures, or they had like a merch table before they got to greet them that maybe they could give them something, but it's a different experience for sure. And it's interesting to see how that evolves. And it made me think, as I told you, Matt Alt, it was making me think of that evolution of pure invention from Japan and coming over worldwide and stuff like that. And it definitely has just went up into the sky for VTubers in this new way of, I guess, interaction with virtual avatars and stuff like that, from Miku and all these others to these more intimate ones through YouTube and other social media platforms.
It's weird. It's, first of all, when you describe the, like, just the appearance concept, I sort of think about, and you just brought up Miku. Remember the original way that they projected her images
and
during
that's
her
the
concerts?
thing too. Like, yeah, like Miku and the Squid Sisters, when they did the Splatoon concerts and some of those things, those are 3D images and things like that.
And they're put on
But
like a
the one
translucent screen of some sort.
for all
right?
these ones, for the VTubers, all of them, I guess they send the equipment that to each con or whatever, and then have them integrate into it. But it's all 2D, just like if you were seeing them on your computer screen when you watch them on YouTube or whatever platform you're on, which is interesting, right? So it's hard to say. I don't want to say it's a step back, right? Because everyone interacts differently.
I don't know if we want to say, I'll stop short of saying step back too. It's just like from just, maybe this is our ages showing.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
but it
I've
looked
never
like
hidden.
a lot of people were coming to see them, and I'm sure they probably still got some decent amount of people at Anime North and other things, even though there might have been some people that said, "Oh, why are you announcing these people and stuff like that?"
Yeah, I
think they announced them all in tandem, especially for Anime North. Is a lot of them are with different agencies again, like V Shoujo and HoloLive and stuff like that, and it comes all at once kind of deal when you sign those deals.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I was just thinking to myself as all
and
those
it's very
deals,
global, very global. When you
it's
see it, it's like they're all across the world, which is crazy.
in many respects, this is just, once again, this is my age showing. I've never hidden the fact that, you know, we've been at this for like on and off for 16 years. So obviously we're 16 years older as fans over time. And like when the announcements were coming, people were like on the Facebook groups, people were kind of mocking the whole idea of you know, VTubers and virtual idols. Like, VTubers is the term now. I like using the term virtual idols because in many respects, we're at least on that track, if not there. Mm-hmm. And I know I could probably be taken to task for thinking of it that way. It's just that this is how I'm rationalizing it in my head, right? But the thing is, I know this is a thing. This is not a thing for me. But I respect it.
And that's what
I've always respected it, right? I mean,
it may not be for us, but if it brings some people in and maybe they'll see something we may like, and maybe we see one of the VTubers we may like, and it kind of cross-pollinates and we discover something new, right? And that's the great thing of fandom, I think.
Yeah.
And I think back, it's technically, it's not really that long ago, but remember I told you about YouTubers and things like that we didn't really used to see them, remember, as guests, and they kind of went to those like more gaming events, small events, like, for example, up here in Canada, in Ontario, Con Bravo, which wasn't in Hamilton at that point, but they were getting YouTubers, and now we're seeing them at all the
but now the
stuff
YouTube
like that, and they're the thing.
YouTubers
You know
are now
what I mean?
even more mainstream than they ever were, at least in the fandom, right? Maybe this is, as I said, this is just probably the way things just evolve.
And you talk about the Trash Days boys too, talking about how it's growing so much, and they're like, "Wow, it's like AniTuber the community is so big and stuff like that." And some of that maybe is the newer fans and things like that.
Yeah,
like,
it's just
in the last 10 years, even
10 years,
10 or
let's say
years.
10 years, because I left the scene before these really started to take off. Like we were gone for all those years, and as I said, when we wake up again and start watching. In many respects, I'm saying, what's happened over these years? It boggles me. And here we are just doing a 2-bit podcast, right? But hey, this is the hill we'll die on, I guess.
Yeah, everyone makes their chances and stuff like that. But for us, we were more doing it for the fun and stuff between all of us. And I think that's what really counted. And some people that went more the professional route, some of them, they started out for fun, stuff like that. But at some point, they turned a gear and they went and made it more than just that. And that's hard to do too, because as they said, you can suffer burnout because you're looking at all these numbers, all these analytics and stuff like that you have to deal with. And that's why C11 is, we had talked about before, is just so important because it just adds so much to those people, especially in Canada.
Yeah. Well, in some ways, maybe you could become a slave to your content or to making content.
The funny thing is, like, quick update on C11. Yes, it did pass. And so now it's going to go before the Senate. And hopefully the Senate, because Trudeau made them more independent, it's actually in our benefit because they've actually pushed back and sent back some legislation here and there to rewrite. So there is a chance, hopefully, they'll take a good look at it and maybe send it back and make some changes. And people have written and done whatever they can. So hopefully some good comes of it, but we'll see how the dice fall, as they say.
Well, I mean, the purpose of the Senate was, there was always a phrase that I learned in school, which was sober second look.
Sober second thought.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it was stamp, 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 stamp. And now that they got a lot more freedom, they actually are giving a little more thought, which is good, especially the independent ones, because they actually sign something saying we will be independent, right? Mm-hmm. And that actually means something, which is good to see.
Well, you hope.
Even if they are unelected and stuff like that.
You hope. But, time will tell. And you know how a lot of people like to feel about those things, right?
Yeah. Actually, it was funny. So I had mentioned, just to finish off on the VTuber thought, is I'd mentioned Pure Invention, and you had told me that I guess it'll be done by the time people listen to this, but it's on ebook now?
Right now, it's been long on ebook, yes. But Matt Alt himself mentioned it on his Facebook, and I guess it's on his Twitter feed as well. So maybe we'll try and put that up, which will probably be too late anyway. But and for reference, we have never put up. I think in like 6 months we haven't put up links, show links, but it's been like that. But Matt Alt mentioned that his book is like the ebook version of his recent book has been on sale for much of July, and he only knew about it a few days ago. He said
because it's the publisher, right? So.
Yeah, it's the publisher who did it. So Pure Invention has been available in ebook form for $3 for much of this month, for much of July, and I think he says it's set for it to go until the end of the month. Which, well, we are taping this on Sunday afternoon, July 31st, so it's the last day of July. So I don't think there's much time left. I bought a copy. I actually bought another, basically my own second copy now. So if I want to pull it up on my Kindle, there it is. Mm-hmm. I actually, when I got to work last night, I ran into Lawrence. Mm-hmm. You remember Lawrence?
He helped Joan on the Friday night, which he pulled through, as they say. So.
Yeah, and and Lawrence, just like us, we talked extensively about, about being collectors as well. Lawrence just told me, thanks for mentioning that, because I found out Kobo was selling it also for the same price. So I bought a Kobo.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Well, no, I think it's the publisher. They weren't matching. It's not necessarily Kindle versus
but you know
Kobo
what I mean.
in this
they want to match and stuff like that but on the publisher side. Yeah.
Yeah, so the publisher had it there for $3 as well, Canadian, and he said he bought it. Mm-hmm. Based on my own recommendation.
As we joke, it's a cup of coffee and it's totally worth it. So.
Oh yeah, it's a great read. I've constantly recommended the book. If you have the chance to get it, I'd still get it full price too. But it's a great read, and you can, as I said, if you're into learning how our fandom kind of evolved, like this is the book. This is a book to at least get you started on learning that. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say it's the Bible. I don't think he'll ever say it's the Bible. But with all these things, it's supposed to get you curious.
I know. I think it's more of a first blush, and it'll make you ask those questions and then look a little further. It'll spark the curiosity, as we like to say.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful thing. Mm-hmm. So if you want to try to understand how we got to this point, how fandom got to this point outside of Japan, and inside Japan too, in many respects, that's a great read. And the thing is, it's a story that's constantly evolving as well. pretty sure he can make there. I'm pretty sure there's now enough material for a sequel now, or at least another chapter, which he sort of did with when he wrote that article about Demon Slayer last year too.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Oh yeah, and Matt Alt, Patrick Macias, they now have a podcast.
No, I knew they were good friends and stuff like that. So that would make sense.
Did you know about the podcast? Or is this the first year? Is this
first time hearing? So I probably
Tokyo Scope. Yeah, it's called Tokyo Scope.
Oh, but I think did they have a website, Tokyo Scope, and
It's
that's
become
just
a podcast.
Okay, makes sense because I remember looking at Tokyo Scope every so often. So I have to look at the podcast version and it was Patrick, I think, that started that. I want to say.
Yeah, and he's the guy who really advertises it when it's there.
So, I'll have to remember to take a look because they're really good minds to.
Yeah, no, they're really good minds on these type of things, and hopefully Matt can still do this. Can still guest here. I think he will at some point. It's just we haven't had time to be able to get it to work.
Yeah, just to find a topic, as we said. That's why I was thinking that one topic with the rise of VTubers and stuff like that, because it's just another link on the chain, as they say.
Yeah.
But
okay. So
I think we can still go. There's a few more things on the conventions.
Let's go there. Like I said, there are 3 conventions this weekend, and Otakon is the most noteworthy, and even Vancouverites are going there. Like, okay, well, I'll flesh out this thought at the very end, but let's see what's caught your preliminary. And I know when Kevin, Mo, and Amy return to the mics as well. Return to the table.
I was going to look at it more in, since it's been so long, right? I'm going to look at AX and Otakon and stuff like that and some of the other conventions. I'll start off with manga. There were a lot of manga announcements and anime announcements. Let's not make anything about that. But for me and you, Mike, as I told you, there were 2 manga announcements I'll mention here, then I'll get to the anime stuff. But AX 7 Seas announced omnibus editions of Marmalade Boy. So that's coming back into print. And I think that would be something we would enjoy, even though I'm sure you still have the Tokyo Pop versions, right?
They're sitting not in the main vault. But if which means it's in a secondary vault, probably at my parents' place.
And then there's another one that was announced at Otakon just yesterday on the Saturday. So Dempa, I feel bad for Ed Chavez and Jacob there because they are trying their best to get, they're still small and lean, even though they had the Faku side, but they are doing a few manga a month. And because of supply chain and all that stuff, it's taking them longer to get things out. So some things they announced last year might not come till next year. For example, March comes in like The Lion. And then Under Ninja is not going to come till this September. So they're pushing things back. So they still had a couple announcements this week. And of course, it's going to be late to 2023. Now,
late 2023. Yeah,
so what I will say is I will mention the one that everyone can think about, which is, yes, they saved Mondays. And if you know what I mean by that, you know what they licensed. And then the one that I mentioned to you that was another one that was rescued that me and you have read before is Short Game Anthology from Adachi.
Short program where by Mitsuru Adachi is
correct. It? Adachi, yes.
Yeah.
And then he was popular for Mix and Touch and stuff like that. And that had been released before Short Game in 2 volumes.
Short program. Do they call it Short Game now?
Yeah, they were saying Short Game, even though we said Short Program.
Well, because that was the name it was when Viz released it all those years ago, and this was the pre unflopped era.
Yeah, and so it's weird because they're saying Short Game in the one for their thing, but then they mentioned Short Program later. But it's the same thing I know for sure that we got from Viz at the beginning of the millennium, and it was 2 volumes. You know what I mean? And that would be a nice rescue, I'm sure, for people to find, and especially since I think it's just going to be 1 volume. I think that's how.
So they'll put it all together in a quasi omni.
Yeah, that's what my gut is telling me, which would be a nice pickup for anyone if they're interested. Especially it's, as we said, different types of stories. Some sports, some slice of life, things like that. So he touches different things than what he normally does.
No, it was great. When I first got into Asian comics all those years ago, and now I'm not, and notice I'm saying Asian comics, not manga. not Japanese stuff. When in the 90s, I think it was, in the early 90s, I discovered at Planet Hobby here in what used to be Planet Hobby, or at the time it was called something else. It was called Gray Region, but it became Planet Hobby, and then recently Planet Hobby closed in Mississauga. Right, this is one of the big comic book stores here in Mississauga that dealt in this type of stuff briefly. There's another story altogether. Kevin, I know can speak to that at a future point. But back in the 90s, whenever I was done, when I was going home from school, I'd pass by Square One and pass by that comic book store, and that was my first run-ins with any form of Asian comics. In this case, they were Hong Kong comics, right? And it was a publisher that's long gone called Jademan, and they published Man Called Hero under the name Bloodsword, and a few others, Drunken Master, but I forgot what its Chinese name was, Buddha Fist, etc. So they were Kung Fu comics. But also, within all of that, they released a couple of anthology series. Jademan Collection, they called it, which were a compilation of short stories. And I think they even had a horror anthology that did short stories. This is something, my point is, when I read Short Program, it reminded me of those anthologies, because what I don't see often here, at least in translated form, in English translation form, is anthology novels. I think anthology series. So Short Program obviously was one of them. The closest that I've come since that I can think of off the top of my head is Boys B.
Now, I can tell you they obviously did them in Japan, but not as much got translated. I know a lot of the anthologies I've seen start to get translated. A lot of Yuri translations of anthologies have come out over the past 5 or 8 years and stuff like that, from Seven Seas and stuff like that. So there's different ones that have kind of come out, but yeah, not as much. Especially back then, that was like once in a blue moon seeing those type of things, as you said.
Well, you know, it was.
And then I think some of the Jump creators, we've seen a few of their anthologies over the last 5 years and stuff like that.
Like Rumiko Takahashi had a few too, right? You know, on the topic of Rumiko Takahashi, there was some sort of those type of things. If you had a BL anthology, I wonder how well that would sell. Probably pretty good.
There probably have been a few out there, I'm guessing.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Because it's easier to do it as a one-shot, you know what I mean?
And this is not, once again, it's just not me keeping up, right? Okay, I'm not into it either, but you know, it's just I just don't keep up like that. So there's some food for thought and maybe just other possibilities to come. But yeah, short program.
But Short Program and Marmalade Boy, it's good to see some classics
on the topic,
or some
of rescues, right?
older titles like coming back into print from different publishers and hopefully finding a new audience, because we enjoyed them and stuff like that, and hopefully they'll have an impression on someone else as well. But there were many other things, but those two between us, that's what I wanted to bring up for that side.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be other titles. It's just, as I said, I just don't get the chance to read.
And then I guess we should look at the anime side. So as we know, since simulcast, a lot of them are just, hey, we're bringing out these new simulcasts and things like that, or we're going to bring these out in the future. So a lot of things for the future for streaming, Chainsaw Man and all these other things, but I'm not going to talk about that stuff. I'm going to talk about Discotheque, which happened at Otakon yesterday on the Saturday night. And then the other surprise is High Dive Sentai. And so they were announcing some of their dubs, but yesterday they snuck one in, and that was Imaru Himoto-chan R, and that's the sequel to the first season. And so that was one Sentai had on High Dive for the last 5 years. It was one of the ones that was on Anime Strike, and that was Amazon's defunct streaming channel for anime. And so we don't know why, but they've never released it physical for Sentai. But now that they've announced this dub for it, finally 5 years after the fact, it's like, oh, maybe it's going to have a physical. And it's so weird that they've waited this long, because the first season many moons ago had the physical, but also had a special edition. So it must have done decently for them. So it's interesting, after all these years, they're going to finally get to it. But hopefully that does well. And thinking of things long gone, because we're talking about streaming and stuff like that, Crunchyroll put up this week, Higahiro finally got a dubbed episode in English. And that one was from a few seasons ago. So hopefully, I guess they're going to look back at some of their catalog. Maybe they'll do something like Laid Back Camp or something like that, or look at some other things that they think they may want to dub, because Crunchyroll and Funimation are together now. That'll be interesting to see how that goes. I know we had
We've
about
long
that
talked
before.
about some of the politics of the dubs.
And some of them too, I've noticed, and I'll bring it up with something I was watching later, but not just English dubs, but other dubs for other languages. Sometimes they're coming out before the English and stuff like that. So it's really a global community and stuff like that now. So the last thing is Discotheque. So they had their big panel yesterday. Few thoughts on that. City Hunter specials and stuff like that. Going to be out Q1 2023. But the thing is, they're very nice. They're not going to make us buy it one at a time like ADV did. They're going to do it. They're going to do it.
That's the beginning of the millennium.
Well,
That
you
is
know
so
what's
2000.
you know what's funny though is that I didn't give Sunrise or ADV any money. I actually bought it from the Comic Den boys when they were doing their fire sale at the Old Star.
At the very end.
So Terry and Anthony gave them. So I kind of bought the new series and stuff like that on Blu-ray, and it was still worth it. But this one, it's going to be one Blu-ray set for all the specials of City Hunter. And it'll obviously have the ADV dub. But they said, I guess the reason is the TV shows in that, they had an HD release in Japan, stuff like that. But these specials have not. So they're doing an HD remaster themselves and stuff like that. So I guess that's some of how they got the okay to do an actual collection, you know what I mean?
And probably on the promise that they give it back to them too.
Yeah,
so
and they've done that.
So that the Japanese licensors can, I forgot their names.
Yeah, that one's Sunrise. They've done it for TMS because they've really enjoyed the stuff they did on Lupin.
Yeah, and basically then they can resell it there.
Yeah, it's funny. Like
that's
that one,
business.
Yeah, and I know they know they have the people there. They know Justin Savakis and all these other guys. They're doing quality work. And the funny enough about Lupin, obviously continuing the train, they got the last Lupin piece of Funimation history license. So Nostradamus is going to come out either end of the year or Q1 next year. They have Columbus Files supposedly coming in October. So all of that. So now it's probably going to be either stuff they've released on DVD or new stuff, which will be interesting to see. But it's interesting to see how that has grown over the last 10 years, considering it felt dead in the water when Jenny On and all the others, the only one that people wanted to see was Cagliostro because of the grumpy curmudgeon, as they say.
Yes, the grumpy old man.
Actually, I hate to tell you, the grumpy old man, they found another one to release from him, Sherlock Hound. They're going to release the Blu-ray for that later in the year. And funny enough, never got the Jenny On release, never got the DVD from them, but I think I'm going to give it a go on the Blu-ray because it sounds like the Japanese one, that side, had a release in Japan, so they have that. But then they had to do a little work on the English side because supposedly the English side is a little different. It's a little longer and stuff. So whenever they released it, there was like separate video tracks and files for the English and the Japanese, which is so interesting and weird compared to everything else. But that one, and Miyazaki, remember, Hayao Miyazaki was involved in that. And so that would be interesting to finally get to and stuff like that physically, because I have watched it streaming. It was a fun little show.
Okay.
There was some other things. I guess the big one is we know we talked about Takahashi and stuff like that. Yurtse Yatsura was their final announcement. They got the series. So I guess.
Whoa.
And they're going to do it in 4 sets in 2023. So it's going to be.
Now this is the revelation to me.
Yeah,
so I was not keeping up.
Yeah. So they're going to finish up the movies this year. So 5 Forever Lum was going to be September. And they said the last one is going to be, or maybe that was the final movie. I forget the naming. But anyway, the fifth movie is September, and then the next movie hopefully will be end of the year, they said. And then after that, in 2023, they didn't give a time frame, just 2023. They're going to start releasing 4 sets of the TV series. They're working with Robert Woodhead to get the subtitles and all this other stuff because there were some special subtitles, especially for Lum's mom and stuff like that. So that's going to be the same. And it's going to be interesting. I never got the series. My brother did get the series. He was more passionate than me, but I might give it a look since 4 sets is a lot easier than, I forget how many volumes it was. It was a lot of volumes, for DVD and VHS.
I just remember it being a lot. I could never get into the series myself, but
I think some of it is, as they said, they did well on the movies, but the other big thing is they're going back to the well for a lot of things. We've seen that with Trigun, and obviously before that, Yurtse Yatsura is coming back, and it's going to be on Noitamina in October on Crunchyroll, and it's going to be 2 seasons, so it's going to be October to March, and then they're going to come back with another 2 seasons and stuff like that. They said for Yurtse Yatsura to, I don't want to say indoctrinate, but to reintroduce to a new generation. Stuff
well, that was the phrase we used.
And maybe it's going to be less filler. You never know. Like we've seen a lot of that.
Filler.
Well, it's weird because a lot of the Shonen Jump and a lot of these other ones, they're taking breaks in between their seasons and different things like that. It's not like Naruto and some of those other ones that they did for years and years where it's like, we just got to keep on putting something out each week, regardless of where we are and stuff like that. Even if we've gotten ahead and stuff like that, it's like everyone's going at their own pace, which probably feels better and stuff like that, depending on who you ask.
Do you want to answer the yes or no that I posed because that one came to mind as we were doing the episode. So why don't you answer this one? Yes or no? Rumiko Takahashi is anime and manga's version of the Rolling Stones.
I would say so. So I guess it'll be interesting too, because we know that a lot of the manga has come back from Viz. So obviously the Caraboner works in that. And we've seen that with Yurtse Yatsura, but the other one is the one dear to your heart, Maison Ikuku and stuff like that.
Yeah, they retranslated it.
Would it come back? That would be an intriguing
well,
one.
The anime, yes. The anime is now the real question.
That's what I'm talking about, is that the old anime that we had from Viz, I feel like it's probably discontinued and not with them anymore. So maybe Discotheque or someone can bring it back. And then it would be interesting. Would someone want to look at that as a new type of TV show? But probably not, because it really, as you said, it went from ship to stern. It covered all the notes almost of the manga in its own way, right?
Yeah. So, like, what you mean by is like completely remaking the anime or something? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
That's
Yurtse and stuff like
because
that. You know what I mean?
Yurtse Yatsura, they're doing that, right?
And
because they never really
went back
completed
to Inuyasha too. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, with Yashahime in many respects, and Inuyasha for that matter, right?
But I guess in a way, yes, Yurtse Yatsura was
and
more
Bleach.
of a cultural touchstone in Japan, so that's some of why it came back. Trigun probably outside of Japan, more of a cultural touchstone, so that's why it came back. But it'd still be fun to see some of these other series, as you said, to just talk or think about, just like we always do.
Okay, the old series, the original Maison Koku series. Remember, 10 years ago, they tried to kind of reintroduce it, or 15 years ago, more like it. Because remember, they did a live action adaptation with... I forgot her name now, but she was the star of the TV version of Densha Otoko, Taiki Nakabayashi, who I butchered because we talked about his late wife. But remember, this was Nakabayashi's breakout role when he played Godai in the live action version of Maison Koku, the TV version. Remember that, and that was the second live action adaptation because they did a movie of that in the 80s as well. But this one was probably more true to form, right? So, like I think the reintroduced to a new generation attempt has already been made in many respects with Maison Koku, because as I said, it came off the heels of Densha Otoko, which was a thing back then.
Yeah, and it would work as a live action and stuff like that, as we know. So
it would work as a live action, so it might be. So I don't know. I would say, would a revisit happen? I'm not sure. But the problem is I can't definitively say it won't. I can't say in my mind it definitively won't, because everything is fodder. Everything is foundation for something later on. Sherlock Holmes has been redone and has been used as a source for Sherlock or Elementary or Miss Sherlock, right? So there's no reason to think maybe for something like other titles.
Yeah, as you said, they can put it in a new cloth and stuff like that and do it. And maybe it might not be in an animated form. It could be a live action form and stuff like that, since that has come up as well with the way streaming services have been looking towards Asia and other areas, right? Other regions of the world to see what contact they have.
Yeah. So there's my thought. Okay. Go through the list. Let's continue, because we're an hour in. Let's go through the list, because it's now fourth. It's getting. Well,
I was going to say that was most of my thoughts on the discotheque list, but they did have other things. They're going to continue Eiko and stuff like that. So the third Eiko movie is going to come at the end of the year and stuff like that. They had some other things in regards to Toku, which is that type of live action Japanese shows and that were in the late 70s, remember, and stuff like that. So they're doing a line on that. I know that they've talked about things that are still coming down the pipe. So Digimon is coming. Shaman King is coming and stuff like that. They're both getting the Astro Res treatment. I know Amy's
going to be happy about...
Yeah, they're getting the Astro Res treatment. So I know for her, that's definitely going to be... it's going to look better than she's probably ever seen it before, whatever way she watched it. But they had a lot of things that just put a smile on different people's faces. And even if you didn't like one thing, there's always another thing here or there. And the prices are always right and stuff like that, as I talked about before. And we'll just keep an eye on, see what comes down the track from them. And they had other things where it's just, hey, things are coming along. Like Cat's Eye, the second season is going to come out later this year too. They had already had the first season, so that'll finish that up. And that ties in nicely with City Hunter too.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think I was going to say, I know Kevin really wanted to talk about this one thing, and I figured we wanted something maybe more topical, right?
Like, well, we don't have to go extensively into which one are you about to bring up?
I'm going to bring up Square Enix, Manga Up, their new app for doing manga worldwide. I guess they were trying to capture what Viz, Shueisha, and Shogakukan got going with Shonen Jump and their other manga app, which is also worldwide. But people noticed a few problems with it and stuff like that. And just to let you know, my Kevin, I want to say that Square Enix is doing this all for the benefit of us all. It's like we may have all sinned and went to hell getting into manga and anime, but they're trying to save all those people who haven't went down that dark path yet. They're making sure all those bars are put over everything. It doesn't matter what. It's kneecaps. It's the letter Y. It's over cleavage. It doesn't matter what the bot thinks. It's going to put it over your face probably at some point. But let's just say you can understand where they went on the first part wrong. They actually had to do a Twitter thing saying that the reason they had all this censorship. So they actually had the censorship on manga. Some of it has released in English physically and been on other platforms, uncensored, no problem. And they said, well, it's because of community standards and other places in the world. And I think one mention was Indonesia because it's supposedly a quote unquote global app. They're not like siphoning and saying, so regions, we just want you to do certain censoring, right? It's like it's doing the whole app, the whole world. And so we get the full censorship. And so I saw some of the stuff like Dress Up My Darling, and they're like censoring the weirdest things like cleavage we've seen censored, which isn't even the biggest cleavage you've seen in the world. We've seen like censoring the pelvis area while wearing jeans of a cosplay in Dress Up My Darling, which is ridiculous. And another manga, as I said, the bot must have been the most Puritan of all because not only were they doing cleavage and kneecaps and all this other stuff, literally the letter Y, like in the bubbles in that, the letter Y was being censored. And they thought it was cleavage. That's the only thing, because it was the top
But it was
of the letter Y.
like, this is like what, a bot, you said? This is
It
an
has to.
automatic thing?
It has to be a bot. There's no way it isn't
So
a
it's
bot.
like
They
there's some
created
sort
to
of AI.
censor, and so I think it's AI algorithm driven that they did, and it's just the most Puritan I've ever seen. So yes, it's worldwide, and I guess, and I think we know which areas of the world probably would want certain things toned down, as they say. But wow, it's like they went beyond the pale and stuff like that. Who knows whether Square Enix will look at the manga app, like they just gave a milquetoast response and saying, oh, it's just because of certain regions, and we'll try to listen to the fans, whatever that means. You can take your...
Well, take that with a grain of salt. And, well, you mentioned Indonesia, right? Isn't Indonesia a rather large market when it comes to, like, Japanese IP and pop culture? It's a big market. It's one of those, it matters. I'm not gonna say try and compare it with something like Canada, much less the US. But it's a market that matters to producers, and it's a close market for Japan.
And remember, there are many. It's multi-religious and stuff like that.
Yes.
And
You just reminded me. It is Sunday today, so
and some of it is. That's why I mentioned that our souls. They're trying to save the souls of all those people who have not.
On that note, I asked whether or not the protesters would be on the Sunday at Anime North. I don't know definitively. Any word as to whether or not that happened?
I have no idea, so I don't think so. But it's funny. There's other examples. So remember, Fullmetal Alchemist is a Square Enix property, and that's on the app. And supposedly it gave a content warning informing readers that the series includes murder, self-mutilation, religious themes, and discrimination. While blood battle scenes and smoking don't get the anime shadow effect treatment on the app, the series. And so some of it was okay on that. It's Dress Up My Darling, and some of the more risky, I don't want to call risque, but more love rom-com type things seem to be the ones, the sexier things seem to be the ones they went after, which is interesting, but does fly with the theory of certain areas where that would be probably more, they might want harsher restrictions on, right? Like certain Muslim countries and maybe even China or other places, right? You know what I mean? But there is another part to this.
Okay, here
we talk about the moral part of it, them saving the children, but then we come to how exactly do you pay to get in through this app? So it's not monthly like the Shonen Jump app or some of the others, or they do like a free chapter for the first recent chapters and then go behind the paywall, right? Supposedly it's like microtransaction-like, and the chapters are actually even split up into parts, like 2 parts instead of you getting 1 chapter. And you get, it says you get daily reading limit of 100 chapters, whatever that means. And then as you go through, you get points to basically go towards microtransactions, or you pay basically to, I guess, get these coins or XP to actually access some of the chapters that are censored, by the way. So it just, it boggles the mind.
It sounds like certain like,
but it blew
Wattpad like apps.
But it blew up over Twitter and all over the place around the world this week for all the wrong reasons.
This has become a PR thing.
I think Square Enix, like, it probably was from the Japan side, probably them, because I feel like the Shonen Jump and some of the other things, it was kind of maybe a bit of a partnership between Japan and Viz and maybe some other partners. But this one, it feels like it was more Japan-centric and say, oh, we should just get this out there and stuff. And maybe they could have consulted with some other parts. Like, remember, Square Enix now publishes stuff in North America in English and stuff like that. They don't have much out at the moment, but they still could maybe talk to some of those people and said, do you think this is a good idea? Or it's like, probably not. They would have said, okay, we can do a global app, but if we want to do restrictions for certain regions that we're worried about, we got to actually do further filters. And maybe our bot shouldn't be as like morally reprehensible because it feels like it's going after everything sometimes, especially on the rom-com side.
Yeah, okay. I think I start to understand where you're going with some of this.
And then it's all the old question, were they doing it for the moral reasons or were they doing it for the good old dollar bill? Or I guess in Japan, the good old dollar yen. Right? Dollar, as you used to say from your friends?
Yeah, it's just, I think, well, it kind of speaks to, remember how we say, okay, Japan is being pulled into doing business like the way other countries would, the way the West would, kicking and screaming. This is one of those, like that tension we've mentioned in the past.
And it's tough too, because we say the West, right? But when we say the West, it kind of means like the Western sphere of the US, of Canada, Western Europe, of Australia, of New Zealand, of certain things. But when we're thinking of these ones, like it goes beyond that and stuff like that, and multi-language and things like that. And so, and these ones they were showing for examples were all English. I'm not sure about other languages, but I guarantee you it's probably the same. And I would say that there's a lot of things they're going to have to rethink, but whether they understand that is another question altogether. And it kind of goes into some other things that Square Enix has been thinking about and rumors we've heard, because we've heard rumors about Square Enix that they want to get sold to Sony, and that Sony wants, if they do want them, there's been a rumor that Sony wants Square Enix Tokyo. So that's why they sold off Eidos and Crystal Dynamics and all those Western developers they bought over 10 years ago. Remember, Tomb Raider, Thief, and all that were done by them and stuff like that. And they never met their quote unquote expectations, even though they made some profit for them. And they sold those developers at a bargain basement rate a few months ago, which is crazy. Like they didn't make any money from that sale. And so it'll be interesting to see whether down the future, this is one of those mergers and acquisitions we've heard rumored comes to pass and stuff like that. And I wonder also for Square Enix, we always think of it, and most people I think in general, think of them on the video game sphere. So we forget. They're not just that. They also are on publishing sphere where they do art books. They do manga. They do content and other things. I wonder if Sony is going to get those too, or do they have to split that off too? And I wonder, okay, are we trying to make it palatable for a sale for someone like Sony or anything else? Because we know Sony has been more restrictive on certain content, so to speak, than Nintendo, which is funny enough.
It's just more of a case of, okay, it's it's on the mediums, because Sony has never done books, have they? As far as I know,
it's hard to tell. Like it's hard to some of them I know they do all sorts of things. They probably have a division somewhere doing something, right?
Because remember, it's hands in everything. It may fit. Like the books in some way may indirectly fit their MO that we talked about a couple years ago about establishing that fourth pillar. Right.
And it would work well with Crunchyroll Funimation, or Crunchyroll as we should now call them, because that's what they are. And because they had a manga part of their platform and it's just kind of withered away, so to speak.
You think this is something that could help prop it up?
It's something to think about too, right?
Well, yeah, play all the possibilities, try and see ahead. And I get it.
And the game side makes sense too for their game side and stuff like that, to lift up the PS5 and stuff like that. And
which you see sitting in the corner over here, right?
And don't worry, I'm sure to tell the guys, it's like if they're doing this on a manga app, I think, don't worry, video games, they can do updates. We're going to make sure Tifa and anything offensive in Final Fantasy, we're going to have all the black bars there and stuff like that put into the remake of the first one already out and to any future entries, I'm sure.
Yeah, redemption, right? It is Sunday. Yeah, so this is a story like this certainly got your attention. You're telling me why it got your attention. Fascinating, though.
Well, there were 2 points. A lot of them are talking about the censorship angle, but I think just as egregious is how they're monetizing it and stuff like that. Just as egregious, and they have this statement, but I feel like they're done. Like I don't know how you go forward with this app. Like I think. At this point, they should just shut her down and they have to start from square one all over again, because I think they're toast.
this doesn't work for you.
Well, I think for they've got the Twitter and all this other buzz, and it's just kaput. They've roasted themselves, so to speak.
Shot themselves in the foot. Whatever other cliche you just did. Self-inflicted wound.
Yep.
Probably a self-inflicted fatal wound.
Yeah, who knows? But it's like there were probably ways they could have avoided it, but I feel like it's something that came from Japan and stuff like that. And if they had done a little more looking at it and maybe went to some other people, they might have avoided some of the worst of this. But even if the censorship wasn't the problem, the way they're doing modernization, I think still would have killed them. And I think they still would have should have taken a hard look at what other things are doing, like Show and Jump and stuff like that. Even what Comic Key is doing. So Comic Key is there's a lot of web ones and stuff like that. A lot of them are doing monthly subscriptions and stuff like that. But Comic Key, they're not doing monthly. What they're doing is you do get the chapters of the manga and stuff like that. I've been looking at Arte, and the recent ones, they have it up for free. I can read and stuff like that. But if I want the older chapters and stuff like that, and it's the actual full chapter, note that, full chapter, you can get it. But basically, you buy a number of keys from them for a certain amount of money, and then it unlocks that chapter and stuff like that. And I think that's more respectable than this weird way of microtransactions or earning XP or whatever to somehow unlock maybe half a chapter. You know what I mean?
Well, as I said, my mom was sucked into those type of apps too. Worked to some degree. Then she realized, oh, wait, I have no more iTunes credit. Mike, can you give me another iTunes card? Okay.
But yeah, it's funny because we had that. And then there was an older one. Remember, we had quickly talked about Seven Seas. And so the update on Seven Seas, which was interesting, is they did finally, after all this time last month, I think it was in June or early July, they recognized voluntarily the union. And so that's all nice and good, and we'll see how that all goes. But they've shot themselves in the foot again. So a few months ago, they had an issue with translations with certain light novels like Classroom of the Elite and Mushoku Tensei. And they had to re-release them. Now, who knows when, like, you're going to have to check the versions on the physical. But at least if you got digital, it's like they've updated and stuff like that. So it's easier, actually, funny enough, to get digital. But this month, and it started last month in June, they had an issue with a recent manga they had released called I Think I Turned My Childhood Friend into a Girl, Volume 1. And so people were reading it, and they said, well, this is odd, because they were looking at it, and they said it was about a boy who's dressing as a girl and stuff like that. But he's referring to himself, what they've seen in the Japanese and stuff like that, as a man, not as transgender woman, which is how it seems they've translated it into English for Seven Seas, for either the adopter or the translator. And so, as we know, it's a prickly subject, trying to get it all right and things like that. So people actually went to the mangaka, because, of course, everyone's on Twitter. And then she's like, oh, my goodness, what's going on? Like, the manga was and I'm sure a lot of them have seen that now with how things have grown, and said, could you please go to the publisher and stuff like that to let your things known? And so they went to them, and then I guess they must have went to Seven Seas, because they said, we're going to review this. And they've done a mea culpa on that one finally, just like they did those other light novels, and said, we're going to have to pull everything and basically re-release Volume 1 with new pronouns and proper translation. And a lot of people that we're talking were across the board. You know what I mean? Transgender, not transgender, male, female, you name it. You know what I mean? And so I think even though they've got unionization, everything's around that end, I think everyone now needs to get on the same page to make sure they have the trust of certain publishers. I think some Japanese publishers they've worked with, they have the strong bonds, but other ones, even in the light novel, which maybe they haven't always worked with, they're probably going to have those second thoughts. You know what I mean? Saying, okay, I always trust the person saying I'm licensing to say, okay, I know you need to adapt things for that particular market or what have you. But after so many stories, so many things, they're going to say, can I really trust Seven Seas to do that after hearing all these different things and stuff like that, and having to go back and reprint or redo the digital version and stuff like that? And I think that's their biggest hurdle now,
It's
not
not
the fact that they've unionized and stuff like that. And all of them at Seven Seas now have to be on the same page on that top to bottom. Like the very top, the very bottom, they have to think about that, I think, in their mind. I'm not sure if everyone is. I think that's the Trojan horse. I don't think it'll kill them, but it's something that could kind of slightly bruise them.
Well, I want to read up on this story a little more. You put it in the Discord?
Yeah, I did. And
Okay,
it's about the tweet from Seven Seas. And they have examples on one site I've seen. And I know that site, it was Bounding in Comics, but as you said, that site's kind of hit or miss, so to speak, in how they report things and stuff like that. But the story, they did show differences and stuff like that. And I could see it from other things on Twitter as well. And it looked like it was relevant. And it was relevant enough that people actually contacted the publisher and the mangaka, and that Seven Seas actually issued the statement. So there is truth to what happened, stuff like that.
This is like
and that's why I said, in the recent one, as I said, I think I turned my childhood friend into a girl and stuff like that, volume 1.
So it's just like, there's a part of me wondering if there's a loss in translation aspect to this, or at least an ambiguous type. Like, I mean, this is sort of like the Evo thing.
And the problem, though, is that Twitter takes it to this whole other level, too, because people were saying different things. Like, some people were defending, some people weren't. But a lot of people were having that balanced conversation saying, this doesn't look right compared to what I'm seeing in the Japanese and stuff like that. And after further review, that's kind of what it was. And the other thing is, I think the offer is, it is, I guess, in a way, a game at the moment, but you never know. Maybe it'll change in the future in a few volumes, where maybe he becomes a transgender female and stuff like that. You never know. It's like a constant transformation and stuff like that of how these things play out and stuff like that. And that's the tough thing. Like, we're not going to say that translators have it tough. It's tough to go from one family to the next in languages, especially Japanese to English and back and forth. But sometimes you got to take that step back and say, okay, what am I looking at? And especially with something like this, you really do have to take the blinders off and go slow and steady. And a lot of them, they have done other titles, as we've seen, but they've been more from picks of, where it's like the real stories and stuff like that of different creators through their experience of transition, whether it's their gay and coming out and things like that, you know what I mean? And Seven Seas has done it, and so has Yen Press and stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh, boy. You know what? I think we've just, like, I want to read up more on this.
But it's,
I don't know if I'll have time to, but
it's kind of funny because you had the light novels and we had mentioned that in passing and stuff, but it's just continued on. But it's something to keep a watch on, as I said, and to think about. And I'm sure other publishers should think about it too and stuff like that, because you want to get right. You want to do right by everyone, but just double check and see how you're going and stuff, because sometimes without thinking about it, you may not exactly get it right and it'll cause you more problems in the end, right? Even though you feel you're trying to do the right thing, it's tough.
No kidding. But that's sort of our world now, right? Everyone has good intentions, or not everybody, but a lot of people generally have noble intentions. Mm-hmm. And it just doesn't come across that way. There is some pragmatism that goes into this too. And then there's just, well, nothing perfectly translates one-to-one.
Mm-hmm. But some of the stories, like these ones, the last two we brought, are some I feel like the others can listen to and maybe look up and think about, and then maybe come back and they can give their 2 cents and stuff like that. And maybe our opinions will evolve. We haven't really given our opinions. We just said, hey, this is
something
what's happening and stuff like that. And something to think about and stuff like that.
And try to limit giving too many opinions these days.
All I think my opinion is that it's funny. I was thinking about Seven Seas in the Union. It's all well and good, but I said the bigger thing is this, what I'm looking at now, and I just wonder how it's going to play out and stuff like that. And it's a tough kettle of fish, right, to look at, even if you have those trusted partners.
Yeah, easily. Anything else you want to bring up, or I think you think you overstayed because?
Yeah, I have one more to give you. Actually, 2 more. So one was, it's funny. So there have been a few things I've been watching for the summer season and stuff like that. but I ended up deciding to add one more thing to the queue
And
this weekend, and that is Lycoris Recoil. And so it's a new Girls with Guns anime from Aniplex, and it's on Crunchyroll.
how old school.
And I'm trying to think, like, I'm feeling like I haven't felt this good about one of these since watching Noir.
I was about to say
or Michiko
Noir
and Hatchikin.
or Madlax or anything like that.
Yeah, or Michiko or Hatchikin and stuff like that. There's some different vibes. There's great action scenes, incredible action scenes. And so the reason why I decided to give it a go, I was going to give it a go at one point, but I saw a story on Anime News Network where Hideo Kojima supposedly was tweeting out about this show.
So it's
because he was on Amazon Prime and he was looking for a critically acclaimed film called Licorice Pizza. And supposedly licorice and licorice are similar in Japanese.
Oh, as in licorice pizza. Are you referring to licorice pizza?
I guess that's what it's called.
It's a Western movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's gotten awards buzz.
So I guess licorice and licorice are similar enough in Japanese. So he's doing Amazon Prime. And so he's like, I guess I'll check this out or whatever. And he just supposedly got hooked on Lycoris Recoil and stuff like that. And he started tweeting up on it. He says, I'm going to be here every week to watch this anime and stuff like that.
And this is on Prime?
In Japan.
What is it on
So
here?
in the rest of the world, it is Crunchyroll. Because it's Aniplex. So remember, since Crunchyroll and Funimation, it's basically
keeping it all in the family.
So it's on Crunchyroll. Funny enough, just English subs so far. They have other languages dubbed, but not English yet. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see it at some point because it's just too fun of a show. It's basically Girls with Guns. The two main girls are at a candy coffee cafe and stuff like that, run by their handlers and stuff like that. And basically set in Tokyo, and not the Tokyo Tower, but the Tokyo Sky Tree is destroyed in a terrorist attack before the series even starts. But they left all the ruins of the Tokyo Sky Tree up just as a reminder. And they say, we're all peaceful now, but they're peaceful because they've now trained all these high school girls basically to stop threats before they happened. And it's called Direct Assault, or DA is the organization. And these two girls were members, but they're now outside with one of the former guys that started this organization. So we're going to see how that goes. But a lot of action sequences and stuff like that are incredible.
It feels like a mix, like just what you just said. It feels like a mix of a lot of motifs throughout the history of anime and fandom and manga. Mm-hmm. Like in the earlier stages, decades ago, you talk about post-apocalyptic, maybe post-terrorism attack. And that, which as Misinformed like to say in his YouTube explanation of anime, that was simple, and then it gets more complicated when you start talking about high school stories. Mm-hmm. Remind me to put the video back up. But it just sounds like it melds the two together. Well, maybe Eva like too, but
there has been there is no high school setting. It's like they've shown us the training facility and stuff like that, but the main thing seems to be this coffee shop for the two girls and stuff like that. And then they're going out on these missions and stuff like that are given to them and stuff like that. And the one girl is basically using rubber bullets and trying to keep things safe so far. Whereas the one that got kicked out of the organization, DA, and is now with her and stuff like that, has tried to get back, but I guess has accepted it at this point of the story, is still using her lethal gun. And when she's shooting basically to kill live rounds. But so far she's basically been shooting now and just trying to get the limbs so that she doesn't kill anyone, because the main character, she doesn't want to basically kill anyone. And supposedly she kind of has this Matrix mode where she can see the bullets and is kind of going around them and just bang, bang, just shooting them with these rubber bullets to incapacitate them.
This I got to see.
And then they do other weird jobs, which are just helping out random jobs, which is funny too.
So much to watch. It's disgusting.
Licorice Recoil. Lycoris Recoil.
Is that, who knows the pronunciation?
Lycoris Recoil.
Okay.
But
and what's the other thing?
Oh, I was thinking about back to the manga up act from Square Enix. And so I was thinking, funny enough, because I'm walking the dog, and then on one of the main streets I was passing by, you know, the library, those Lendl libraries that people will put on their front lawn, like a little box and stuff like that. I was debating to myself, I said, if I lived on a main street and I put one of those on, but instead of regular books, I just put manga and light novels, and I got all the ones that have long names that have make run-on sentences look like nothing. Maybe put some other things like maybe some rom-coms or some other oddball things in there. I said, how long before either A, someone from the city comes and basically takes it down because I've corrupted the community and stuff like that and I'm fined, or B, there's nothing left in it because people took everything and then never actually put something else back in the box. I was about to say
that one. I was about to say
what's
which
more
was
likely?
More likely? Yeah, B, easily. Because and then at that point the city won't even have the chance to check to know that you're corrupting people. So
sorry, the only reason I thought that is I saw it was because of that story this week. It just gave me a good chuckle thinking about it. It's not a yes, no, but it's still a funny thing to think about.
No, it's hilarious, actually. Okay. All right, just quickly on my queue. I was about to start, or I was early into, I know you got to go soon.
No, we're good.
I was about to start the third season of Kaguya-sama. Okay. I think I watched the first episode already, but that was a couple weeks ago. Well, it was actually before Anime North, so maybe about a month ago. I may have to rewatch. I was debating with myself taking out a Shonen Jump subscription, yes or no?
See, the thing is, I think you can still watch it. Well, sorry, not watch, but in that case, read the recent chapters. But it depends. You want stuff from the beginning,
I would have
right?
wanted stuff from the beginning.
And I'm not sure. See, that's the problem with some of the apps and stuff like that is I want to say they have all of it, right? But I'm not sure because sometimes online they'll have some of the chapters, but not all the chapters. So that's what makes it hard to tell you yes, no, right?
Well, maybe I guess but it's not the most expensive proposition per month, is it?
Mm-hmm. And they do have it physical so far, but yeah, it makes sense in your sense to maybe think about more digitally, and you never know, you might find something else you stumble upon.
Well, yeah, I was thinking about it because, well, yeah, obviously I want to read Kaguya-sama because that's a Shonen Jump thing, isn't it? If memory serves me correct.
Yeah, it's in that realm. I don't think it's Shonen Jump proper, but it's still
and I think
whatever. It's one of the related apps in that.
And it's in the app. I think it's in the app if memory serves me right. I remember looking through it.
But it's interesting with Kaguya-sama that I feel like it's one of the more recent rom-coms in recent history that really has got buzz and has got season after season. Because you never know what's going to catch fire and stuff like
soon.
that.
I think the creator mentioned they'll end it soon. So,
no, I know the manga, it's going to end at some point. They're getting closer to that end game, as they said.
Yeah, no, it's more of a case of also, I wanted to just read a few things. Remember, and while I have a physical copy of Demon Slayer, the box, I'm asking myself, maybe I'll just read it. It was easier to do
that since they had the box, full thing, right?
But the thing is, I know chapters are there, so maybe I can read it digitally without having to corrupt my box.
Yeah,
right?
no, on the phone and stuff like that, yeah.
Sure. So that's my dilemma about Shonen Jump. But as I said, it's not a big ask. Was it $2.99 a month or something? Mm-hmm. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's something around there and stuff like that. But everyone's different, right? And the other thing is you don't have to worry about censorship, so to speak. Some of the ones they have had issues with, the one manga we have talked about, something Triangle. But anyway, that one, I know they put it in other places. And then I think Seven Seas rescued that one too. I think it was Ayakashi Triangle is what it was called. But that one, they've put it in other platforms. I know what it was. They would not have things on the app, but they would have it on the browser version that you could access certain manga, and that was one of them. So that's an interesting way to work around and stuff compared to Manga Up from what we saw.
Well, I mean, I think you can get your regionalization that way.
Yeah, it's a weird world, especially. But yeah, no, Kaguya-sama, like, great one. And you never know. There might be some other ones, as you said, you might look to. And even Demon Slayer, yeah, you might, instead of go to the physical, you can just go to the digital. And that one is definitely on the actual app itself and browser.
Yeah, we'll look it up. Anyway, so I think we've used up enough time.
No, I'd say I figured we were going to go long in that, and we still have tons of time on my end to spare. I did take a look at the clock. I know it's probably a long episode, but we had a few that were less than long, even at Anime North, because of all the crazy things that can happen, right?
Okay, let's go back to Anime North, where we ended there and all that stuff. I mean, see, as I said, we're going to see an attendance record, or at least when the numbers start to come out, it'll be pushed forward as an attendance record. It's just that there's so much. Like, I read the Facebook group. I don't go as much on Twitter. I get it, but there's so much vitriol, so much anger sometimes, right?
So what's over like?
Oh no, people were like, they were slamming them.
What?
People were slamming them over the.
Oh yes, the lines.
lineups.
I remember the lines.
And people saying I could have ran this show better.
I think realistically, people don't realize until they get behind the curtain and stuff like that. And the other thing was they wanted to do right by everyone and by the attendees and set up these policies. But when you do set them up, it's as Norm said, it's like you're not going to be a well-oiled machine after 2 years off. You know what I mean? Like, you have to get back in the swing of things. We didn't always have all the staff there because they might have had issues like myself, where maybe someone got COVID, maybe someone had a close contact.
Or worse.
And then the other thing is we want to do right by having, making sure you had your shots and stuff like that, and things like that. And so, yes, it does add up to time in that. And it wasn't out of malice. It was just, they were figuring things out themselves sometimes too. And it was a learning experience that they learned for next time if they ever have to go through this again, which that one part, the looking at vaccination status and things like that, they may not be doing next year. You never know.
I'm curious to see what stories will, if related stories will happen at, or have happened at Matsuri in Houston. I know that's enough. That's a 4-letter word. All I can say, at Otakon, at Revo.
But all I can say is, if they want lines, if they want to be in the worst of the worst, they could have went to Anime Expo. That could have been the fifth ring of hell. If they wanted to see the worst of the worst, they could have went there. Trust me, they didn't see the worst of the worst. Anime Expo, seeing some of the things there.
But then again, but that lineup was at least indoors, maybe somewhat air conditioned, quasi air conditioned.
Well, some parts
because
they went around blocks though, just like they did before. So that was outside.
Yeah, but in Anime North, that was almost exclusively outside, those lineups.
And that was, I know that is the toughest part and stuff like that of that. And as Kevin, I think, was saying, like, you had certain lines where they had gaps and stuff like that between, and it wasn't the Thursday, it was Friday and on. That was the tough part. And as you said, there was the release the hound moments where they wanted to do right by people, and they should have seen that, where they said, you know what, you weren't able to get in on Friday.
So we'll honor you on Saturday.
We will honor that on the next day. You know what I mean? And so I think they did the best they could within the circumstances, and everything is a learning moment. And some people, you just gotta, yes, it's not great, but sometimes you have to take that deep breath and say, okay, what's going on, stuff like that. And I feel like they would have let you know and stuff like that. It's going to be warmer. Bring some water and stuff like that. You're not always going to be indoors. I would have prepared myself with water, sunscreen, whatever, if I was a regular attendee and stuff like that.
Yeah, and but but this is like you're getting a younger demographic here who probably don't know better. It's, well, we're in 2 weeks on the whole hindsight's 2020 phase now. Right?
All I would say is 2 wrongs don't always make a
no,
right.
And
right?
that's why I take a step back when I read the anger, right?
Like, you know where they're coming from, and they know.
Yeah, I can respect where they're coming from. It's just that if you really think you can do better, like some people say, well, I know how to run events, or I know certain things, and that's cool and all.
And then the question you would ask them is, okay, that's nice to see, but when's the last time you ran an event? Did you run it during COVID or during these times where you may want those extra precautions and things like that?
And did you run it?
Where was the facility and stuff like that? Because they also had have the buy-in of all the facilities, right? Of the Congress Center, of the hotels and everyone. And that's buy-in too. That may not always happen. Like we've seen other conventions where maybe that's why they've been leery of putting full precautions on, like Anime North and Anime Revo. Like last weekend, there was one in Winnipeg, and the way it looked there is all they said was, we're not going to force you to wear masks, but please respect people who do. There are going to be some events with guests and things like that where they would like you to wear masks. If you do not want to wear a mask, you're not going to be invited in and stuff like that. And that's kind of how they did. But probably for Winnipeg and stuff like that, it would be a lot less people at that convention center. I think it was RBC Convention Center. The interesting one, as I said before to you, is Otakuthon, which is going to happen in a few weeks in Montreal. And so far, you never know, they might change it, but it sounds like they're not going to check for a vaccination record or anything like that. And that maybe the mask proposition is going to be a personal decision and stuff like that. I haven't heard anything about guests, but I wouldn't be surprised if some guests ask politely and say, could you let people who are coming to my thing be masked and stuff like that? And hopefully they would honor that. But everyone's going at their own pace and stuff like that. And Montreal will be interesting because if they're a little more lax, I think that would be a bigger con and stuff like that, closer to Anime Revo and Anime North in terms of size. So you would have thought they would have been not more aggressive, but more realistic and think maybe we want to put a few more things on here.
Well, you'll know whether or not it was the right call a couple of weeks later when we start seeing people's tests.
Well, as they said before, and all the conventions have that, it's a stickler and says, we can't guarantee you will not get COVID. It's like, that's a risk you're going to have to take as an attendee, and a risk we're taking when we go outside every day, right?
Oh, yeah.
So,
when you go,
and people have to understand that.
When we go outside, when I go to work, when many of us go out to work, I get it. So this is, yeah. As I said, like you said, maybe some people who are throwing stones also don't know. Have you run these things before? And we know we both have
and
our
in
experience.
recent times
yes,
too.
In recent times.
Real,
but we know, like even when times were good, I know how like I can speak from experience, knowing how stressful these things are, and I didn't even sit on the head of it, but I was along for the ride. For my own experiences, seeing in the early days of Anime North and the early days of Fan Expo myself, when I was helping those things along. And you sort of see it yourself in the background in your in some of your more recent roles. I mean, you help out in the all-night tracks.
Yeah, the good thing was the all-night track did not happen this year because they closed at 1. So luckily, me not being there was not a death knell for us, because I've been going to the vault to curate the all-night room for over a decade, so to speak. Because remember, a lot of conventions at the beginning of the millennium and stuff like that, there were still sometimes some fan subs and things like that in those all-night tracks and stuff like that in different conventions and things like that.
But we're past that point.
But we're definitely, I tried to get us past that point well before like 2008 and stuff like that, so that I didn't want any surprises. I don't want someone from a company or otherwise to walk into the room and see something of theirs and it not be an official copy and stuff like that for our region and stuff like that, and cause problems for the convention or whatever. So we got to get it right. So for a long, long time, like we've had the official Blu-rays and everything there, so that if anyone comes in, they're seeing the real deal and stuff like that.
Or even maybe a retro copy, like an out of print. Maybe I think you can get away with at least an out of print.
Yeah, no. That's why I say, like, when they see the official, sometimes it may be out of print, because sometimes I'll show older stuff as well, of course. And I know, Norm, we're talking about showing the older stuff and showing some laser discs and stuff like that.
And on that note, it was Tom Smith's collection he mentioned. You knew Tom.
Yeah, no, he was helping out, well, not with the All Night specifically, but with other parts of the All Night, the hentai room and some other rooms that they were doing some marathons and things like that. And we checked some rooms, he checked some rooms, and he was a really good guy to work with. Like, it's a tremendous loss for the convention. And as we said, he's one of those ones that'll be hard to replace, as Norm said, as a person and everywhere, all facets.
Yeah, he was good. Yeah, I mean, as I said, I crossed paths with him over the years, and he was, he was not say he was at least a big brother figure in many respects, because when I was associated with him, when I knew him, he was much older than me.
No, of course he was.
And that's saying something, because I'm noticeably older than many of you guys too.
Yeah.
Not you, but the others.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the gap. That's the generational thing. And this is, well, as I said, this is where fandom is in many respects. It's facing generational gaps in fandom will always be generational gaps period will always be a thing. Right? Anime, when we talk about these things, me being so out of touch with what's popular and what's trending in the fandom these days, this is our version of me, or the way I'm expressing the generational gap in fandom, or the way I'm looking at it. But this is from the older side.
And we reached the gambit as we talked this afternoon, right? We talked about VTubers, we talked about everything under the sun that has changed over time and stuff like that. And will continue to change. And
it's cool. It makes you, but when you have been in it as long as you have, so I guess when you're the older generation, you really do step back. Enjoy it. As for anybody younger listening to this, which probably is nobody, take a step back though. You'll know it at some point.
And I guess
you'll be in our shoes some years down the road.
It's the question too of, you still had people at the Nomonichi coming up and getting something and selling something to them that they wanted and loved. And that's, I think, something we can all celebrate at these conventions. Because I wonder about that, especially with streaming over the last decade, and how it used to be for us, we'd get months after the fact an officially translated English version with a dub and stuff like that. And now, as we've always talked about recently, it's almost instantaneous for the Japanese with English subs and even other languages. Plus, we have these dubs that are coming not months or a year after fact. It's like maybe 1 month or weeks after the fact. Like, they're going at rocket speed to get this stuff for people to consume on the internet. And there's so many shows every season that it makes me wonder, are these new shows going to be the classics of tomorrow, or are they just forgotten in a heartbeat because of how streaming, Netflix, and these different sites run their businesses and things like that?
So maybe there's something to be said about early release physical media, because maybe that's how a title endures. And I think this will be a yes or no years into the future. And could streaming hurt the, what is it? Not necessarily popularity, but the nostalgia for a title.
And that's what I'm wondering too. And will certain titles that maybe we were nostalgic for that have come back, like Fruits Basket, Yurtsura Yatsura is coming back, Trigun's coming back, and all these other ones. Yes, we're watching, but this new generation, how are they going to look at these different shows? Are they going to want to go back and look at something well off down the road and stuff like that? Will they have nostalgia like we used to? And that's a good question, especially since it's a consume and forget society almost in our minds, but maybe that's just in our older minds. You know what I mean?
No, I mean, let me expand that just before we go today. We were so defensive about anime and manga as an older generation back then, because we had to scrape and claw to find something. We treasured it a lot more. But and this is probably like, pop art and high art in other regions, right? Well, what we see as high art is like for us as foreigners to, as international consumers of Japanese pop culture, we look at it as high art. To them, it's just everyday something they can throw away. And I think that bridge, and I think that gap internationally is narrowing. It's coming to the point where international fans are looking at it maybe the same way as a lot of Japanese consumers would have. And so it's becoming even more and more disposable.
And they can do it the week to week, and they can talk about it on social media across the globe. And that's a big thing too, right? So
that while that at the moment popularity, and it gets you the money, it's there. That'll always be there. You can always manage it decades down the road. will that nostalgia be in play? And that's and while and you can say all that's well and good, it's still always about the money. If you can get the money back then and get nothing else, but if you always get it back then, and it's more than anything you'll ever see in the lifetime of an IP, it's worth it. Yes. But music artists always looked at the holy grail, their holy grail. Their pop music artists look at their holy grail as something that endures, not something that necessarily makes money, just something that endures. That's the holy grail. In many respects, I think for any artist, whatever you do, music, movies, animation, comics, television, enduring over generations, that's probably when it's all said and done, what you want to be remembered for.
And I don't think that's always what's going to happen with certain animes and things like that because of the production committee system and stuff like that. Some of them are getting evergreen titles and are able to continue on and have it's with you everywhere, like the merchandise, the games, the anime, the manga, the novels, what have you, and some of them continue on. But a lot of them, it just feels like one and done. It's like, we got to get this out while the sizzle is hot. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, yeah.
Especially when you have as many titles as we have now.
Yeah, I know. I use the term, like, it's like ease. Well, ecchi is a word too. But it's, like, I use the term emotional enduring or emotional endurance. You use the term evergreen. And I think those are all the same, similar terms, at least in the context of what we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I think my gut is telling me evergreen will be fewer and far between from this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I'm not totally sure that's a good thing. It's maybe a little melancholy and sad to think that it'll be hard to find now from this point. Right? So, we'll, just a thought.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see those evergreen titles because Crunchyroll's still trying to get a lot of that stuff on Funimation over onto their site and stuff like that, even though they said they were going to have most of it by the end of that 1 month and they didn't even hit the mark and stuff like that. And a lot of this stuff has been recent year stuff, maybe a handful have been stuff from the aughts or maybe well over a decade.
I'm waiting to still see Wave Listen to Me back on Crunchyroll because I enjoyed that so much on Funimation. Mm-hmm. Not there. Not right now anyway.
We'll see how it goes. It's like slowly but surely, but it'll be interesting to see what the future holds. And I guess
we can talk about it, ad nauseum, right?
Yeah, we'll see what happens next time. As we said, I think we've probably outdone ourselves. I'd say I guess we can say this is an episode almost.
Yeah, this
right?
is a but it's still just a space heater chat. So we've overstayed our welcome for 2 hours.
Well, at least we got the mics warmed in, right?
Well, broken in. So what's your take? What's your first impression of the new Shuri mics?
I think they're great. We'll see how they sound once we get the episode up and hopefully get some feedback. And as we said, the 5 stars and all that razzle dazzle.
We think the mics are fine. Mm-hmm. At least they left a good first impression here. The bleed doesn't seem nearly as bad as they were on the older Apex mics. Mm-hmm. But it's up to you guys to tell us what you think. So, we'll give the usual contact information. So we're on the web. It's so outdated, but animeroundtable.com. We're on Twitter and Instagram. It's so outdated at animeroundtable. We're on email, which is outdated, which just in a concept is outdated. animeroundtable@gmail.com. Twitter and not Twitter and Instagram. Twitch, twitch.tv/animeroundtable. This would have been probably good as a video, right? But just not today. But worth trying. And, at least give us a follow there so when something goes up, you'll be notified of it. And, of course, subscribe to our podcast, which you're listening to right now. And if you could give us a review, as Kevin says, try and give us the 5-star, all that razzmatazz, all that razzle-dazzle.
Yep. And,
jazz hands, etc.
as he said, give us your honest opinions.
Well, yeah, that too. So that
And always
least we know
remind
about it.
us, make sure to plug in your cords.
oh yeah, that too.
Can't hurt us.
No, it can't hurt at all. So yeah, as I said, this is just another mic test. So and but it's also, well, it's been a while since since James had popped by 6 points. So it's the first time I've seen him in person in a couple years.
Yep. It was before COVID and stuff like that. So
Yeah, good to see you.
no, it's good to be back.
Yeah, thanks for coming by, and thanks for helping me test out the mics.
Yep. No problem. It was good to christen them and stuff like that. And I guess we'll see what we do with the old mics, as they say. Do they get the Viking funeral treatment, or do we see if we can find them a new home?
Well, check out the. We'll probably put them on sale initially on, at least mention it on the Twitter feed, right, and Instagram, just saying they're now for sale.
Mm-hmm.
These are nice. This is a good first impression. These new microphones. You know, as I said, the Trash Taste Boys use the what is it? The SB4 or whatever it is. The really advanced version of this.
Mm-hmm.
And the old school version, but the original versions of these mics. But these are updated versions that are more, affordable. Because, we don't make the same money as the Trash Taste Boys.
Also, there are more podcasts these days too, right? So that
they're
helps
just
us
plain
too.
out there.
It probably helps us find better quality, affordable mics, right? Compared to what we
compared
got
to
way
what
back
we
in the
back,
day. You know
back
what I
in
mean?
2006. Well, these are more. I say these are probably a little bit more pricey than the ones that we got back then. But then again, that all said, I bought those used, and they're only breaking down now.
Mm-hmm.
So
So
maybe-
the quality was there.
So, yeah, and then just times change, technologies change, needs change. So the microphones kind of go with those changes.
Mm-hmm.
Like the equipment goes with those changes, right? I mean, we can go on about that for another 2 hours, but let's just turn off the recorder now.
Okay.
Anyway, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you in a couple weeks, I guess, and maybe we'll finally do episode 69.
I see.
I had to say that one more time.
I see. Episode 69. Is that the extra special episodes, they say?
It'll be who knows what we'll end up talking. I'd say it'll be more mature, but that's sort of what the talk is anyway.
So what's going to happen when we turn 69, Mike? Is it going to be like
It'll be the end,
or is it
it'll
gonna
be the end. That's what
It's
it is.
gonna be the
it's
end,
going to
huh?
be the end.
It's like everyone's going to fear turning 69, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And one last thing. Okay. As we're taping this, we are in the middle of a long weekend here in Ontario, and I think a good chunk of Canada.
Yeah, just
So-
not Quebec.
It's not Quebec. Well, they have one something too at another point.
Yeah, in June, Saint Jean Baptiste.
Yeah. Well, just for reference. So we're in the middle of a long weekend. If you're in Canada, hope you're enjoying it. And we'll talk to you in a bit.
Thanks again.